Okay, good evening, everybody. What year are we doing this, Rabbi Klatzko? Third?
Third.
No, it can't be. It's like 10th. What do you say, Rabbi?
I don't know. We had COVID in the middle. So.
Okay, one of those times. Okay, so I want to welcome our illustrious panel over here. First of all, my name is Rutenberg. So I'm excited. I'm so excited about this. I came all the way from Passaic, New Jersey, in 21-degree weather. It's warmer here. It's 23 degrees, so that's very good. Thank you. It's good to have some fans. Any out-of-towners tonight? Okay. So first we have the famous Rabbi Klatzko. He just does so many things. He has one of the biggest Jewish websites called Shabbat.com. He also is one of Torah Anytime's most popular speakers. He also trains rabbis to be kibbutz professionals at Olami and really heads that project. He probably does another 20 things I'm not even aware of. And he sings songs and produces music. He hosts Shabbatons. He has the Kiva trips. Wow. Okay, I can go on. And he's also happens to be a Shalom Bayit and parent expert since he has been happily married while having, 11 kids, Kanai Hara? Right, so that makes him, a Shalom Bayit and parenting expert. Yes. Okay, next we have Emet, CEO and founder, Rabbi Akiva Rutenberg. He really wants to help the Bukharian community continue to grow and flourish and just not become like the Ashkenazim. And
Hey.
Wait, is that being recorded? Okay. And he's been putting in for the last 18 years about 60 hours a week or so on this project. And there we have Emmett, and really my kippah goes off to him. He's a great individual to work with and work for, and it's been a great 14 years or so. And he also happens to be on the side is an LMSW and is really helping so many couples. He is a great mediator. You go to him, everything's already peaceful. Okay, then we have I don't want to say a substitute for another guy, but a pleasant
surprise.
But a pleasant substitute. We figured we want to have more Ashkenazim on the panel, so
that's what we need.
So we have someone I consider a great friend, Rabbi David Delman, and last time we really spent quality time together was in Poland before COVID, and he has been working for Chazak and JEP, and he has an MSW degree in his own right, and also married for many years with how many kindler? With seven kids. Oh, Kanai Hara. Okay. Hashem should help you get into double digits if possible.
Relax.
I said impossible.
Speak to his wife. Relax, buddy. Relax.
And then we, for any tough Bukharian questions, we're going to just refer to Rabbi Ribacoff over here. Although he's quite Americanized, coming here in the 1970s. Is that correct? When did you come?
I was born here.
You were born here? Oh.
Made in the USA.
Wow. Right. We're not even sure if you speak Russian, actually.
I'm not Bukhari.
All right, well, today you're Bukhari.
we need one on the panel. We need
one. A token, at least.
And are you the chief rabbi of anything in Long Island?
Hewlett.
Of Hewlett, right. Here's the chief rabbi of Hewlett of Long Island, which is amazing. And we are really very, very, very pleased to have you on the panel. And he's a Chatan teacher, and him and his wife work with many, many, many couples. It's great to have you here. And how many years are you married?
26 and a half.
26 and a half. Wow.
You beat me.
No. After 20, it gets easier. According to some opinions. Okay, so welcome. If anyone has any questions, please. Shai, is Shai here? Shai is Emmett's new couple director. Shai, you filled the house. It's amazing. Baruch Hashem. Well, I don't know. All the seats are taken. So if you have any cards, just call Shai out, because right now I only have 2 questions, so it's going to be pretty boring. Right? We can start asking each other questions. Oh, we have also some people texted in questions as well, but I'd like to see some. Usually, a lot of times we do this and we ask people, instead of filling in cards, just people raise their hands, which sometimes is embarrassing. So we always say, just don't say like, oh, my wife says this is my friend's problem, But here on this card, you don't have to write your friend, because, I don't know who it is. Just please don't sign your name, okay, especially if it's anything incriminating. Okay, so all the panelists are going to get a turn to say something, but not for each question. We're going to do 2 panelists per question. If you go over, I will stop you. Okay. And this is in no particular order. Hopefully these questions are good. But please, any questions, give them to Shai. And I just also, people have texted us questions. Okay. And so we have a combination of parenting and Shalom Bayit together. What could be better? Okay, let me see what people texted now. Okay, well, let's just start with something fiery right away to get the crowd's attention.
Fantastic.
Okay, the first question is, now I don't know, probably no one has this issue, but just in case, how should one deal with a spouse that tells their parents and friends all their problems, but tends to over-exaggerate them, making herself or himself look innocent and the other one look guilty? So how do we deal with someone like that? Let's, I'm with cover to a man I've been working for, Rabbi Rutenberg. Let's start with you. Okay, did you hear the question? How do you deal with a spouse that tends to tell their parents everything that they shouldn't be saying, getting them involved is a big no-no, and over-exaggerate and always make them look good and the other spouse look bad? I'm going to hand over the mic.
Wait to the mic.
First of all, good evening, everyone. Very nice to be here. We missed this workshop, this panel last year because of COVID, and I would like to think that this is the end of COVID. One thing about COVID, I mean, there's a lot of good that came from it. One of the good things that came from it is it made us appreciate things that we didn't appreciate before. And our biggest challenge in life, I would argue, is appreciation, especially in today's society where we seem to have so much and yet are often not happy. And that lack of happiness is pretty much driven by a sense of entitlement and a lack of appreciation. So I think, as my father said it so well, a few weeks into COVID, he said, I never remember waking up every morning and say, thank you Hashem that I'm alive. And I think that we all have that feeling, and just seeing each other, and as I stood here tonight and waited as people came in and welcomed people, it was like this feeling, and we had the same feeling at the Emmet Couples Retreat. It was like, this is not just a regular retreat. This is like, we're really here. There's no social distancing, and we really have this opportunity. So it's really nice to be here with everyone, and to be here with Rabbi Klatzko, Rabbi Delman, Rabbi Ribacoff. Thank you, Rabbi Kigel, for being here. And usually Rabbi Meirov is here, but he hurt his neck, and it was very hard for him to come tonight. So even after my pleading with him, he said he wasn't able to make it tonight. So Bezrat Hashem, we will do these more often. And there has been an interest in having this more than once a year. So what I would like to do is to send a little survey form after this program, and Shai will send it out to everyone. If you could give us some feedback, and one of the questions will be, if you'd like to have this more often. So the question was, a person asked. Rabbi, remind me the question again.
Okay, the person, one of the spouses likes to get their family members involved in situations at home. Even though it's a big no-no, they must have missed that lecture. And they exaggerate. Not only that, but they always make themselves obviously look good, and the other spouse not look so good.
Right.
So what do we do? And so now, I'm sure the spouse has tried to say, like, hey, can you not talk to your parents about this? But it doesn't seem to be working.
So I'll tell you, my observation from what I've seen is very often people get their parents or in-laws involved not because they want to, but it comes because of a certain amount of frustration. And sometimes it comes from feeling that they don't have any other choice. And sometimes the parents or in-laws are able to pick up on your body language and they're able to sense that something is wrong. What I would say first and foremost is, if a couple has a strong, healthy relationship between each other, then almost always it's healthier and better not to have the parents or in-laws involved, and to go to other people to speak to about the relationship versus going to family members. But there could be exceptions to that too. There could be exceptions. I would say that and this is the reason really for this type of program we have tonight and all the workshops that Emmett is doing for couples. The best way to answer that question is to never get to that question. Okay? In other words, when somebody asks me that question, I will say, okay, you're already like very late in this situation, and that itself, that question itself, says that there's a lot of unhealthy things going on in the relationship, both the speaking to parents and family members and the exaggeration, right? Some people have a tendency to exaggerate, but sometimes the exaggeration, and I just want to address that separately. Sometimes the exaggeration is because that's what it seems to the other person. I've had couples sit in front of me, and one spouse, they're talking about a specific event. Both intelligent people with master's degrees, very educated, very successful people. And they're both talking about the same event, and you would think this one's talking about a cup and this one's talking about a dog. They're describing two entirely separate things. And sometimes when one spouse, whoever sent this question, is saying that the other spouse is exaggerating, it's because it feels to them like an exaggeration. But it may very well feel to the person who's going through it that it's not an exaggeration. It may feel, that's what it feels to them. And what we say in relationships is perception is more important than reality. So if the other person perceives this as a total disrespect, or the other person perceives this as neglectful behavior, very disrespectful behavior, etc., it's important to think before we just jump to conclusions and say, oh, she's exaggerating, he's making a mountain out of a molehill. But it's possible that that's what it actually feels like to that other person. So in relationships, very often we get defensive, which we try not to do. But if we're defensive, the biggest problem is we're not putting ourselves in the other person's shoes. And if somebody responds very strongly, the response we should try to have is, well, I'm sorry you feel that way. Why do you feel that way? Or how can I help understand this better?
Beautiful.
Okay, so thank you, Rabbi Rutenberg. That's like a Shalom bias answer. So first, he said that once it gets to that point, and for all of you that are here, that are maybe newly married, not as married, have not done this yet, do not do this. That's the first thing Rabbi Rutenberg said. Do not discuss with your parents what's going on, especially if it makes the other person look bad. So one of the things I tell the couples that I'm fortunate enough to work with is I say, you have any complaints, call me. I'll hear them. Do not call the other spouse because they'll get mad for the rest of their lives. And then the second thing is you have to focus and say maybe it's not really over-exaggerating. Maybe it's just their perspective on it. So, okay, with Hashem's help, my advice is call someone else, not the parents. And Rabbi Ribacoff, what's your thought on this?
I guess I agree with everything.
Good answer.
Of course, the rule is, as was mentioned, that never, ever get the parents involved. Everyone is biased in their opinions. Usually, your parents will take your side, and the other parent will take the spouse's side, and therefore, it'll never really get resolved. It just leaves a bad taste in the mouth, and they'll look at the person differently from now on. So it's better, again, not to get them involved, as was mentioned. Better to get a third party, a neutral third party involved. That's somebody who is a professional, the rabbi, the rebbitzin, a therapist, a marriage counselor, to be able to listen objectively and to be able to try to deal with the problem as much as best as possible. And the issue when it comes to exaggerating, as Rabbi Rutenberg mentioned, the perception is very important, and it might be that this is the way they perceive it, and you're maybe downplaying exactly what happened, what didn't happen, and their opinion needs to be taken into consideration. If anything, you should try to listen and to see what they're saying, to understand where they're coming from, to get a better idea of how they're perceiving what exactly is going on, and for you to be able to try, if you want to learn from that, to try to mend your ways, to become a better spouse, to not to have this issue or problem, whatever, come up again as well. But it should be discussed first of all with another individual who was able to help. As Rabbi Rutenberg mentioned, I can hear that possibly because of the frustration, that's why they're reaching out to the parents. But again, that's just your own frustration and not being able to deal with it on your own or with somebody who's able to help you. That would be the best route to take.
Okay, amazing. So before we go on to the next question, I just want to make a point here. I was just thinking about myself, like Baksham, we just had a daughter get married, and thank you. And I'm hoping, I'm not talking to myself, but just in general, now as an in-law, right, before your kids come to you and tell you things, this friend, that friend, that's normal. But now, if anyone has married kids or is planning on having married kids at some point, just remember this: if they start talking to you, say, please, I cannot hear about the other spouse. It's not my place. If anything, please call Rabbi Rutenberg. And he'll deal with it. Okay, now we have a very good parenting question. See how we're switching from parenting to Shalom bias? Okay, what if your children feel that you are giving preferred attention to one child in particular? And I'm going to ask the man with 11 children. I'm sure that never happened in your household, but maybe it did. What do you do if one of your children feels like, the other children feel like, sort of like Yosef, you're giving some guy, the dream coat, and everyone else has to wear H&M, God forbid. Let me give you the microphone.
Thank you, Rabbi. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to give a plug before I begin. You mentioned Shabbat.com. We're just finishing a 2.5-year build in 2 weeks, and the entire site was rebuilt. As COVID winds down, it's time to start inviting people. Unfortunately, there are almanas in our community now. Almanas means widows whose husbands have passed through COVID, and they need invitations every week. We're actually getting those requests. And there are other people also who, unfortunately, each week it's torture for them. And we sort of take it for granted if we have a Shabbos meal in our home. Like, of course I have Shabbos. But for somebody who is single, for somebody who is divorced, somebody like that, every week, 50 weeks a year plus, it's torture and Yom Tovim, and it consumes them. And if you've been on the site before, reactivate your account as Hashem. It will work far, far better. We put millions of dollars into this, literally. And if you've never been on the site, then please sign up and and invite. Be there for people.
Rabbi, how many Shabbos placements have come out of the site?
We have about 1.3 million people have been invited for Shabbos since we started. Thank you. And we were averaging before COVID about 6 shidduchim a month. It slowed a little bit during COVID, but I woke up this Friday morning to a very nice note, another shidduch through the site. They sent me a thank you. That is Hashem. We put a lot of money into this, tremendous amount of time and resources, and we want to compete with the big boys in terms of a social network so that you can go on and Jewish people can take care of Jewish people. So it's spelled SHABBAT.com, and you can invite people. It also has shidduch.
A lot of people interested in attending.
Every week we had over 50. We had over 50 people from the website this week. 50 people just this week. So I don't want to be the only one. I'm not the only one, but especially in our community, we have Bukharins every week, every single week. So no reason they should have to come from Queens. I mean, we love having them, but we should open up our doors and our homes and our hearts for them.
By the way, whenever Klatzko says 50, he means in his house, right?
In the house, yeah, 50 in the house.
I thought he meant in the site.
No, not on the site, no. 50 people in my home for Shabbos. They're all over the world. So.
Wow. That's crazy. And he had time to come here tonight.
Yeah, we ran away after Havdalah. Believe it or not, we found out the most popular city is not New York for Shabbat HaKam, it's actually Tel Aviv. We had someone look at it, so in Tel Aviv they're using it a lot to find places. Okay, let's get to the question. So here's the issue when you're on a panel. When you're a speaker, everyone's a speaker here, we get into our speeches and we speak with enthusiasm and we modulate our voices. But in a panel, it's always a danger of being sort of even and everyone just gives their answer. And it can get a little bit long and yawn-inducing. So we're going to try to keep the energy level up. Children being jealous of each other. And it is true. You cannot treat every child the same. It would be impossible to take, cake and cut it up, especially if you have a lot of children, to give everyone exactly the same piece and with the exact same attention. The truth of the matter is, when a child says, why did she get that? I also want it. Very often, it's not the child being jealous of their sibling. It's the child secretly telling you, I don't feel I'm getting enough attention from you. I need attention from you. And that's the solution to trying to play judge and jury to make everyone get the exact same thing. The children who feel that they have their parents' ear, and they have their parents' heart, and their parents' attention, are happy children. And they won't, once in a while they'll be jealous someone got a nicer set of earbuds. But in general, children understand, especially in larger families, children understand that not everyone's going to get the same of everything. Believe it or not, kids get that. When a kid feels that sense of jealousy, the child is saying, Abba, Ima, Papa, Daddy, Tati, Mommy, I'm not getting enough attention from you. So I'm feeling lacking and I'm getting attention. I'm watching the other sibling get attention. So our goal should not be to try to be even, get everyone the same thing. Our goal should be to try to give the child the attention the child needs. Now, every child needs a different amount of attention. Some kids are very needy for a lot of attention, and you have to give them a lot of attention. We have a child that likes playing Rummy Cube, and every single night, my wife sits on the floor and plays Rummy Cube with them. Every night. Other children like doing other things. You give the child what they need, and then they'll be happy and there won't be jealousy. Yeah?
Can I just ask a question? How does that apply to an only child, though? I mean, they get all the attention, but it seems like it's still...
The question was, what about an only child? So you wonder, well, the question was, the only child wouldn't be jealous of their sibling, but the only child could also feel...
There's a forum here.
What?
Write it down. No, I'm just telling her.
Oh yeah. I'll finish this. The only child could also feel a lack of attention from parents. And oddly enough, you would imagine, if there's only one child, they probably get loads of attention. But it's actually the opposite. Only children very often are sort of taken for granted because the parents have not learned how to juggle their time and attention. When you have more kids, it actually is a training session for the parents. I'm a much better parent. Sorry if my kids are watching this. I'm a much better parent to child number 8, 9, and 10 than I was to child 1, 2, and 3. I know I am. I know I am. Because I didn't know how to be a parent. I mean, even if I would have listened to class, I didn't know how. So I thought they're okay, but I wasn't giving them my attention. Now I know what does it mean to focus and give the child attention. And so an only child can also be lacking attention. There you go.
Okay. Okay, Rabbi Delman, what would you like to say about that?
Oh, okay. Hi, everybody. Good evening. It's always tough being the second guy answering the question because really the first ones they take the. I'll be first next time. So I have a small family. Kanana Hara just 7, and big family. I don't know. Yeah. So the Torah tells us Chanoch Lanar al pi darko, which means we have to judge. We have to treat and spend time with our children, and each one according to their path. Every child is different. Every one of my children is incredibly different, requires different amounts of love and attention. And I think that something like this takes time. to sense how much each child needs. Some of my children, frankly, raise themselves. Other ones need a lot more time and love and attention. And it's our job as parents to sense, and sometimes, as Rabbi Klatzko said, through how they ask us. When they say, oh, he got that piece of cake and I didn't, what are they asking of us? And sense when that person needs a little bit more time and attention. So something that I've trained myself to do is have a lot of daddy-daughter time. Now, I have 4 daughters and 3 sons, and I think sometimes, and I guess it's easy to admit, that I tend to feel, or it's easier to bond with my boys, because I'm a guy, and we can bond over the Mets. Not the Mets, because I hate the Mets, but not the Mets. But they're easier to bond with, and maybe it'd be more difficult, perhaps, with some of my daughters. So that's why I go above and beyond, like extra, perhaps, sometimes with my daughters, and make sure I have something in common with each of my kids. So when I feel there's a time, I take off a few hours in work, and me and one of my daughters will go out and spend a few hours together. And I think and this is actually something that Rabbi Rutenberg said a few years back at one of these types of things. So I apologize if I'm taking this from what you said. Where is it? I got to find it in my pocket first. There, that's right. This is the enemy to all relationships with your children. This is the absolute enemy. So we have to make sure that when we spend time with our children that this never gets involved. Sometimes I'll actually use this. In other words, if my phone will go off while I'm with my daughter or my wife, this is actually true with your kids, also with your spouse. I in front of them, I turn it off and I say, you are more important than whoever is on this phone. And it goes back in the pants. That's the way it goes, right? That was a good one. So that's it. I hope my wife is watching. So that's the bottom line, ladies and gentlemen. You have to be sensitive. You have to have a sixth sense as to what your kids are telling you when they ask. And make sure you spend lots of daddy-daughter time, mommy-son time, whatever it is, special for that child. Make them feel very special. When the other kids, hey, I wanted this. No, no, no. Today is just you. Tomorrow will be you, and then the next day will be you. And it's something that you work on. It takes a long time. And I agree 100% with Rabbi Klatzko. I'm definitely a better dad on 5, 6, and 7 than I am in 1 and 2.
Okay, very good. I heard the first child gets more of the inheritance because they practice. Okay.
Just practicing.
Okay, thank you. I just want to, this was very brilliant. Just summarize in a word or two. So basically, this is just a good point for me and for all of us to know. Rabbi Klatzko said that if your kids are saying, oh, you pay attention more to Joey than me, they're really saying you don't pay enough attention to me. Wow, brilliant. And Rabbi Delman, besides reiterating that, also said, put your phones away when dealing with your kids. It's like, I just remember growing up, we had TV. Now, at least TV you had to go to. Here it follows you. It's really, Hashem should help us. Okay, next question, back to Shalom bias. How do you make your husband/wife feel number one? Now, this is written in female handwriting. So I don't know who they're referring to, right? I don't know who they're referring to, but you probably want to say, how do I make me feel number one? Husband or wife. You got that? Let me read that again. How do you make your husband/wife feel number one?
Let me take this one. I want to answer this one too.
Okay. How do you make them feel number one? They should be number one on your list, on the priority list, on the pyramid, whatever you want to call it. As Rabbi Delman mentioned, when it comes to your phone or your wife or your spouse, whoever it is, they should know that they are number one. If you have to go somewhere, do something, they should be number one on the list. If they need something to be done, make sure that it gets done. You have to go out of your way to make sure that they feel it. And if you're not getting it right, they will nudge you again and again and again until you do get it right. So therefore you might need to, tap into the spouse to find out, do you feel like you are number one? Whatever you feel is necessary, you have to go out of your way to make them feel that they are the priority, they're number one on your list, on your to-do list. If they're going to call, you stop whatever you're doing to make sure you take the call. If they need your time and attention, they need your help, whatever it is, to make sure that they know that they have your back, that they can be, that they can call you, no matter what, that they will be, that you will be there for them right away. It's very important for them to feel that they're special. And whatever it takes, it's going out of your way, like the little going out during the day, the little rendezvous, going on vacations, going out to restaurants, taking out to walks, whatever is necessary. And there's no real right or wrong answer. Ask the person what they want. If they don't feel that they are number one, what can I do to make you feel like number one? What do I have to do in order to make you to feel that you are special? That you are, my spouse. I cherish you. I love you. I respect you. I want to spend all my time with you as much as I can. Yes, I have other responsibilities to take care of and to do, but whenever I can, I will make sure that you're going to feel that you are number one in my life.
Beautiful.
Okay, that was very, very good. We're going to try to speed things up a little bit because I'm getting a lot of questions and we cannot be here till 11. That, by the way, was such a brilliant answer, though, because who thinks about the fact that, hey, you want your spouse to feel number one? Feel that in your head. That's great. Amazing. Okay, next for Rabbi Rutenberg. Okay, how can we make time for each other after having kids, and the kids, as they get older, have later and later bedtimes? I'm curious about this myself. We haven't recovered since the first one hit high school, and then we could not put them to bed like when we wanted to anymore. So how can we make time for each other after having kids when the kids have later and later bedtimes?
So it's a great question. With my family as well, it's not always simple to figure that dimension out. I would say though that planning, and again, it's not something that I necessarily do, so I'm talking to myself. Rabbi Delman mentioned that I said something about his cell phones a few years ago. And the reason I said that is because, I struggle with that, and I still do. So this is, when I give you an answer, and I'm sure this is true for other people on the panel as well, we're not preaching to you, we're also talking to ourselves. But I would say that the best answer would be to schedule and to have set times, like Rabbi Schaefer in his new book, which I highly recommend, 10 dumbest mistakes that smart couples make. And this is a shout out for that book because he has a lot of very good points in that book. And he talks so much about scheduling and about having like date night and having set times. And one of the things that I encourage couples to do is to have like a half-hour slot where it's like let's say the first 45 minutes that a husband gets home, he puts his phone away in that place. And maybe the first half hour after the younger kids go to sleep, there's like the phone gets put again into that place, and it's set time for them to spend time with each other. Scheduling, we're very busy today. Even if we're not busy always doing productive things, we're always busy, right? That's like, I think they could summarize our society today with one word: busy. Busy, we're always busy, right? You see people walking on the street, how often do you see them not looking at their phone while they're walking? They're doing something, everyone's multitasking and triple tasking. But when we prioritize and schedule, that's something very, very important. And it also goes back to the last question of making the person feel like number one. When you schedule for something, right? Like when you're looking forward to going somewhere, it could be a wedding, a party, whatever it is, you feel good because you're looking forward to something. They say more than the excitement of the event itself is the planning for that event. When you schedule with your spouse, if you text your spouse during the day and you say, would you like to go out tonight, or you want to do something, like even if it's do something at home, like I want to set aside this time for us tonight, I want to do something together with you. When you prioritize and schedule that, you accomplish both really these questions at the same time, making the person feel like number one, and making sure to have that time. So my answer in one line is, don't wait for it to happen. Don't just wait for all the kids to be asleep and to doing their thing, and everyone should be in the right place. Maybe that worked when your kids were 4 or 5 years old and they went to sleep by 8 o'clock, whatever it is, and then you just automatically had time. But if they're older and they're going to be around, schedule. And I will just make one more thing. I'll say, schedule also time for yourself. Okay? Schedule time to take care of yourself. Whether it's working out, whether it's you're learning, whether it's whatever it is. If you don't just expect, of course, I'll learn when I have time, or I'll exercise when I have time. Chances are it's not going to happen. And if you're not exercising, you're not learning, you're going down physically, spiritually, emotionally, etc. So schedule, schedule, schedule.
Okay, I would also strongly recommend, if you can, get out of the house, get a babysitter, especially the older kids. They stay up late is the downside, but the good side is they can babysit. So, and get out of the house, because that's like so important. Okay, next for Rabbi Delman. How do I explain to my husband that I'm not the only one that has to care for, feed, love the kids? He thinks his role is just to provide and make money. That's not the only role.
Thank
Of a
you
husband,
so much
father.
for this question. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
No attention to wife and kids.
Okay.
I mean, I wonder if she has a point to make over here. I'm just trying to figure it out.
Okay.
Okay, ready?
So the question was exactly how do we, like, roles as far as he needs to know to split
Yeah,
the work with me.
The husband feels like he
Okay.
makes the money. You know, he's out. He's not like sitting around the house collecting unemployment. He goes out,
Fantastic.
makes the money,
Maladies.
comes back.
Okay.
You should also make sure the guys.
Yeah, I'm talking to the ladies, talking to them too. Okay.
This is for the ladies that are asking the question.
Yes. How do you know? We don't know. It's 2022. We don't assume anybody's gender. Anyway, I want to share a it's a long story, but I'll make it very, very short. The story is told about a great tzaddik in Israel by the name of Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, blessed memory. And a couple came to Rav Shlomo Zalman for parenting, or not, advice. They were having marital issues. So the issue was, he said, the wife says, I'm disappointed, I'm upset at my husband because he makes me take out the trash every day. I always have to take out the trash, and every time I ask him for help, he never takes out the trash. He always says, I'm in yeshiva, and these hands that are Torah, these hands that turn the pages of the Gemara, these hands that turn the pages of the Torah, I cannot make them hands with the dirt of the garbage. And that's why you have to do it. So Shlomo Zalman was hearing this back and forth, and he said, I don't know what to say to this couple. I just don't know what to do. So they left Rav Shlomo Zalman very, very upset, because they feel that the rabbi did not give the advice that he was supposed to give. The next morning, at about 6 a.m., the couple hears a rustling outside the front of the house, and the husband opens up the door, and it's the Rosh Hashiva, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, who is taking out their trash. The Rosh Hashiva, the head rabbi. So he goes, Rabbi, what are you doing? What are you doing? Please let me take it. It's not absurd. He says, well, if you're not going to do it, someone's got to do it. And that was the great Rosh Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, who taught his husband a great lesson. Oh, we don't assume it could have been a wife. Who knows? That no one is unbecoming or not good enough to do what needs to be done. We live in a world today that, people say, what is the rules? Should a husband do this? Should a wife do this? Whose job is it this? Whose job is that? And whenever I hear questions like that in my practice, I always say, we should throw out all those rules. You need to do what's good for you in your family, what their needs are. And if your wife needs a little bit more help in this area, you need to do that. And if your husband needs a little bit more work in there, you need to be there for him. That's why I always said that the greatest marriages are like a yin-yang. Have you ever seen a Chinese yin-yang? It's fat on one side, skinny on the other, fat on one side, skinny on the other, where the man will make up her weaknesses and the woman's strengths will make up his weaknesses. And we work better together that way. So we should never feel that one has a job and the other one must do. And if the husband needs to pitch in with the cooking every once in a while, I'll just, as a segue, and then we'll pass off to the next person. You don't really appreciate your spouse until you don't have them. So, not to disclose too yes, until you don't have them. Very true. So, about 2 years ago, Baruch Hashem, blessed us with our youngest son, Mordechai. And to make a very long story short, my wife almost died during the labor. And Baruch Hashem, through miracle of miracles, she was saved, and now Baruch Hashem, we have a healthy baby and a healthy mommy. I had to play Mr. Mom for 2 months. I can't tell you how much more I appreciate her, right? To make dinners and breakfasts, and I can't cook, right? And all of these things. She does it, and you just don't appreciate it until you don't have it. Every day, B'Makar Tov, we're so lucky. Rabbi Rutenberg, myself, all the rabbis, we're on the front lines of guys and girls who are crying every day that they don't have the proper shidduchim. And then once we get that shidduch, we don't really appreciate it as much as we should. So appreciate it every day. Everybody in this room is so lucky.
Okay, very good. Very, very good. So I just sum up, that was beautiful. So to sum up, basically, first of all, if you're a guy, take out the garbage.
Yeah, take out the trash.
And appreciate the other spouse, I would just say maybe the husband, it's not like he's being the best husband in the world necessarily, looks like, but maybe if you say, oh, I'm so happy you made the money, wow, thank you so much, we have stuff, Baruch Hashem, and then you could say, hey, can you do a little bit around the house? Maybe it would work, I don't know. Next, for Rabbi Klatzko, we have 2 different parenting styles, and it affects our relationship with each other and the kids. How do we find a compromise? Very good question. 2 different parenting styles. Happens.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, a parenting style is very often a reflection of your personality. So if you're easygoing, then you deal with things in an easygoing way, and that will translate into how you deal with your kids if you're a little bit uptight. So it's not actually a parenting style, it's your personality. To say an actual parenting style, it becomes a little more of a hashkafic question. Hashkafic means there are questions of how to deal with children through the eyes of Torah. That's what rabbis are for. The rabbi would say, do we let our kid have a smartphone? Do we not let them have a smartphone? Do we allow them to dictate their own curfew? Do we these are questions. Now, having said that, it's healthy for parents to not be exactly the same for their children. Now, they shouldn't contradict each other. That's not healthy. If the child thinks they can go to mommy when daddy says no, or the opposite, that becomes a very unhealthy dynamic. But it is healthy to sometimes have what we call a good cop and a bad cop. It is healthy that at some points one of the parents should be strict, but if the child feels cornered because both of them are very strict, so that's not healthy, and both of them are very lax, also not healthy. We don't have to be the same to raise a child. We can be different. In companies, you have different people who run the company, and some are good at numbers, and some are good people managers. So that would be the first point I would make. You don't have to be the same in parenting style. Right? You can be different as long as you're not contradicting each other. The second thing is, and pardon me, dear men, for saying this, but Chazal say that women have a bina yesera. They have a very, very unique level of understanding. Part of it comes from the fact that they carried the children for 9 months. And then they were with the children in the formative years where men were at work. The women saw the child develop, perhaps nursed the child, perhaps was there as the child learned to speak, saw the child's temper tantrums. So women, Chazal tells us, have a better understanding. So sometimes, in my experience, and I do some counseling as well, I find that men are stubborn because we don't like to be wrong. Men like to be right. And we're very strong about that. And very often, the wife will try to approach the husband and say, don't be so hard on him. Like, try to understand. And men are like, no, it's not like that. It should be like this. And the child is not understood, and the wife is trying to calm the husband down because she understands the nature. So I would tell you that all things being equal, when you feel like being stubborn, I'm speaking to the men, listen carefully to what your women are saying. Very, very often, they'll say, no, I know our daughter needs this. She needs the extra dress. She's not been feeling pretty. She's been feeling a little bit beat down in school. She needs this. It's more money you would have spent. Trust me, it's a good investment. Let's listen to our wives a little bit more, and Ezrat Hashem will raise beautiful children.
Rabbi Ribacoff, would you like to answer that? I feel like that's something you deal with a lot, different parenting styles.
I'll give you a story. One time a couple came to me, and it was winter time. They had a newborn baby, and she tells me the husband wants the baby to go out naked. She should be tough like a Russian, get used to the cold, and to make him strong and do that. And the wife is like, it's a newborn baby. What do you want? He's fragile. He's it's very sensitive, delicate. What do you want to do? I agree with Rabbi Klatzko about personality-wise, a person's style when it comes to parenting and discipline, maybe. But a lot of times it comes from your upbringing, the way you were disciplined, the way you were brought up. There's a lot of things that's passed over from, I won't say hereditary, but from father to son or mother to daughter. The way you were taught is what you've been ingrained with, and you feel that that's the right way to do something, and therefore you want to implement it to your own kids. As was mentioned before, every kid is different. Every kid has different needs, and for some kids it might work, and for some kids it won't work. So you have to be flexible in that understanding that not one shoe fits all, and one size fits all. You have to be a little bit flexible, understanding, and the only way to do that is either to reach out to the rabbis, the rebbitzins, or the professionals, or come to these type of classes and to listen. There's a lot of parenting skills that are out there. Avail yourself. There's not only one way, again, to discipline a child. There are many ways, and you have to find the right way that touches your child's heart to be able to get that point across to them, whether it's doing your homework or cleaning up the room or doing the chores, whatever it is. There always has to be a way that you can reach that child to be able to understand you, where you're coming from, the spouse, and then be able to discipline the child in the best way possible.
Very good. Love that story. Could have happened to me when I was a kid also. It's very interesting. It's something picking up from what both of you said, that sometimes you have to embrace the differences. Like you can play good cop, bad cop. I remember growing up, my father would always say, if both parents are the same way, it's not necessarily good for the child. So embrace it, first of all. And second of all, like Rabbi Klatzko said, and I think Rabbi Ribacoff as well, do not contradict the spouse in front of the kids. So if you have something to say, calm down, take a breath, take it in a separate room, and then make sure you say it in a way that the kids can't hear you screaming either. So do not contradict in front of the kids. Next, this is a very psychological question we're going to give to Rabbi Rutenberg. How can I help my spouse stay positive and optimistic? They are so hard on themselves.
Good one.
Great question, and definitely a question that I've heard many times. People ask this question. So the question is, how do I help my spouse be more positive if they're very hard on themselves? I'm a very strong believer that a healthy marriage is made up of two healthy individuals. And that means that if one spouse is struggling with, be it depression, anxiety, self-esteem, whatever, that needs to be addressed separate from the marriage. And this can be very confusing and very complicated, because when you're in a marriage, your issues are my issues are your issues, and it feels very intertwined. And very often, if a spouse sees the other person being down, if they're a caring, sensitive person, and Baruch Hashem, I surround myself with many people like that. But I mean, at Emet, I literally I thank Hashem every day that we're blessed with so many, literally thousands of special people who care and are sensitive and nice people. But sometimes a sensitive, nice person in this situation has it harder than a more callous person, because when they see their spouse down, especially as a husband, one of the greatest satisfactions a husband will get is taking care of his spouse. And if he can't take care of her because she's down and she doesn't feel good about herself, very often he blames himself. And he says, oh, I must not be a good enough husband. I'm not taking care of her enough. And he'll right away start, trying to fix her and fix the situation and make her happier, because, it's my job. I have to make her happy. Why are you down all the time? What's going on with you? And that also very often is not the solution, to push a fix on it. And I strongly believe that if a person, we come to marriage with our issues, and marriage brings out also our many issues within ourselves. And when I give my class to couples before the wedding, one of the things I ask them in the class is, what's the most important thing to work on in your marriage? And I pause, and the answer I give is yourself. Right? Mm-hmm. Even though the assumption people have is the most important thing is our communication, our Shalom Bayit, our the connection between each other. No, that's not the most important. Okay, but it's not the most important thing. The most important thing to work on in your marriage is yourself. When you get married, you don't cease to become an individual. You're still an individual who's part of this new thing called the marriage, and you're committed to each other, and there's a whole process of your individuality, sort of letting go of your individuality as you create oneness with your spouse. But you're still an individual. You still have responsibility for your individual relationship with Hashem, your individual relationship with yourself. And I think that when this type of thing happens, it's important to get the proper advice, to try to understand what's really going on. Is it like a serious, almost like clinical type of thing? And I've seen situations where sometimes the wife needed advice to go to somebody like there's somebody in our community, Rachel Shaul, who gives these positive thinking classes, and sometimes just that alone, her taking these positive thinking classes and being in that environment can help the whole marriage and make things a lot better. So basically, my advice is try to look at the situation objectively, try to see where it's coming from. Don't try to automatically fix it. Try not to take it personally. Sometimes we do have to just let a person be, but at the same time, it also could be a good idea to get advice and to go to a third party for advice. One of the biggest mistakes couples make is that they think going to a third party is only when the marriage is in crisis. And a lot of times, by the time somebody comes, and I think I say this for everyone on this panel, by the time they come to us, it's like, there's barely a pulse, and the time really to come is not that time to come to your rabbi, to your advisor, is when there's not a major crisis, and just say, you know what, we're struggling with this thing, do you have some advice how I can handle this? And that can often be very helpful.
So I feel bad because I take so much, I've studied under both these gentlemen for a very long time, so I take a lot from Ribacoff as well. A Klatzkoism that I live by is Judaism is not a religion, it's a relationship. So when we ask ourselves, when should we think about our spouse? So we have to look in the Shema. We want to make someone feel good about themselves. When should they be on our mind? In the morning, at night, in the evening, on the way to work, on the bus, on the way home. We have to ask ourselves, do we really think about our spouse that often? Right? But do we try as hard, perhaps, as we did, that we're married now for 10 years, than we did when we were single, when we prepared ourselves for dates and we went out and made sure that our clothes were perfect and everything was exactly the way we wanted to be, but now we don't try as hard as anymore. So I would say the greatest way, or one of the greatest ways to make somebody feel worthwhile is not in the big actions. I think sometimes we make that mistake. It's got to be some huge, like, I'm an 80s boy, so boombox over the head, playing, some love song, I love you, whatever it is, and this huge thing. Right, you got it. Bryan Adams. It's in the small things. It's in the so I'll give you a small example, right? So like every once in a while, my wife works at Tveres Moshe. For those of you who know Tveres Moshe. And every once in a while, unprompted, I'll go to Dunkin' and get her favorite donut and her favorite mocha chocolate, and I have to know the exact order because it's a decaf with the caramel on top, but this and that, right? And it shows it's not, and it cost me $1.50, like $2.50. But it shows something more important than that. It shows that you are on my mind. So I'll just end off with a very quick, beautiful story. I speak often about my Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Steinberg. Rav Steinberg Zatzal once had a student go to America. And Rav Steinberg said, listen, do me a favor. When you're in America, don't forget to bring me back Folger's coffee. It's my favorite coffee. We can't find it here in Israel. Please bring me back Folger's coffee. So the Talmud said, Rebbe, of course, for you, anything. So the kid went for like a month, 2 to America to do whatever business and job he was doing. And when he came back, or when he was in the airport, he realized, oh my gosh, Rebbe asked me for one thing, and I forgot it. I forgot the one thing. So he went back to Rabbi Steinberg with a certain sense of sadness, and he said, Rebbe, I'm so sorry. You asked me for one thing, and I forgot it. So Rabbi Steinberg laughed, a great big laugh that I remember Rebbe used to do. He used to say, ha 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 ha. You think I needed the Folger's coffee? I just wanted you to have your Rebbe on your mind all the time. That's the idea, guys. Do you understand? We have to have our styles on our mind all the time. And it's not the big stuff. Don't make big shows. You have to go this and get on one knee. A small trip to Dunkin' could save your marriage. Just $2.50.
He wasn't so successful.
What?
He wasn't so successful. He wasn't at all.
All right, you ready? We're gonna switch to a parenting question. Now I have both from text and cards. This has been asked like 8 times. Okay, so I think it's important. Okay. There's just different forms of the question have been asked. I'm just going to read this one because it's the most coherent. But it really, a lot of people ask the same question. My wife and I are both working ourselves and trying to grow in our relationship with Hashem. Okay, we're having our first child soon, Bezras Hashem, but unfortunately both have immediate family members that aren't religious or are, God forbid, off the D. And we're nervous about them negatively influencing our future children. How can we make sure that they do not imitate the bad, unreligious behavior of family members without having to move to Cleveland? I added that part.
Everybody.
Okay. Rabbi Ribacoff. This is a big question for all Bali Tshuva. Like it comes up.
We're both from Cleveland.
Yeah.
Two Clevelanders.
We're both from Cleveland, by the way. That was
Low blow, low blow.
That stung a little.
Oh boy, I hope that wasn't recorded for all of you.
You can move to the 5 towns.
No, 5 towns is emotional. They can find you.
That will be there. Great question. So offhand, I would say, I guess behaviors or off the D or parents not religious, again, it's not hereditary. It's not automatic just because they are, your children will be the same. A lot of it has to do with the home. I think the most important thing is the home, the environment, where the kids grow up, where they go to shul, where they go to school, who their friends are. All these things have a major effect on the child. Disowning the parents, I think, is almost impossible. They have to be a part of your life, whether it's the happy occasions, the smachot, Shabbat, holidays, and so on and so forth, for them to interact. But the child has to know that there's certain rules. They might ask, why is Auntie dressed in that way? You know, they should understand that there's a way of dressing tsunua, we're modest, wearing a long skirt. And that's the way we dress, and that's the way, the way we are supposed to have it. That's the way the yeshiva, the Beis Yaakov, is expecting you to dress the same way. They didn't grow up in such a religious environment. They didn't grow the same way that you did, and therefore, they don't know. But we don't hold it against it. We don't make fun of them. This is who they are, and this is who we are. And the child has to feel confident and good about their life, so that they're growing up in their home with their parents. With certain rules. How come we don't have a TV and grandma and grandpa have a TV, and you have to understand that that's their life and this is our life, and certain things we can and cannot do. So we need to ingrain these things within our children to understand what's important. The best thing to raise a child is to have parents getting along with each other. This is what they need to see in the home, so that's very important for a child to have a good, safe environment between the parents, that they should be on the same page, understand each other. And when it comes to religion, it's something that we should be espousing and be the example, to be the mentor of what it is. The type of lifestyle that we're living is the type of lifestyle that we want you to live as well. Don't be a hypocrite. Don't expect them to do certain things. You have your kids have long payas, and if you cut it short, again, if you espouse a certain idea, a certain method, if you want to eat Dunkin' Donuts and that's good for you, that's fine. If you want to be a Chalav Yisrael and Kelach Yashan and all these other things, that's a different issue. Bas Yisrael, if that works for you, that's the standard that we have in our home. Why can't I have OUD? Because we don't hold by it, But to understand that there's differences that's out there, and they should embrace it and to accept other people for who they are. That's who they are, but this is who we are, and that's something we need to engage with the children. If we're happy, if we're confident of who we are, it should pass down to the children as well.
Also, most of the people in the room definitely have to deal with this. That's one of the perils of being a Bali Tshuva. So, it's so funny. I've heard so many stories about this over the years. The little kids come up and say when they see secular relatives, especially the parents, they come up to the parents and say, "Oh, when did you become Jewish?" And they're like, "What? I was always Jewish." So yeah, but your parents they're not religious. They're not Jewish, right? And they're like, "No, they are." And you go this whole thing, and it's a little bit funny, but it's a little bit sad. But I think, like Rabbi Ribacoff said, you have to remember first of all, the kids spend a lot more time with you than the other relatives. Like, I'll give the flip side of that. When people go to the therapist, they're never complaining about the relatives, right? They're always saying, my parents did this, my father did that, my mother did that. That's what therapy, it's a lot of therapy is about that. It's never about the other people, because they're spending so much time with you as the parents. So that's number one. So you don't have to worry so much. And number two, you also, like Rabbi Ribacoff said, you say, this is our way, and there's different types of people in the world. You see, not everyone's religious, and hopefully they'll be religious one day. And I just, at a personal level, I hope no one's watching this from our family members, but we've always empowered our children to say, you know what, maybe the grandparents aren't religious as we are. Why don't you be a good influence on them? Why don't you teach them a little bit in a nice way? Who can say no to a cute little grandchild, right? And it really, really, really has worked that way, Baruch Hashem. So you can really empower your kids, and you can also just know for sure that what you have going on in your house is the most important. And always be respectful, and other people will usually comply.
Can I follow up that question?
This is totally out of, do you want to write it down? Write it down.
No, because this relates to that question.
Okay. Do you want the mic?
No, I'll ask you. What if it's a teenage and it's old, and the child is older and it says but this is who I am. Don't ask me to do whatever you're doing. That's what I like.
Oh, that's a totally different question.
Yes. Oh.
Right. Okay. That's a good question. We're going to save that. Okay. That's a different question. Okay. Please, can you write it down? You have a thing in front of you. Because that's more about your own kids. Here we're talking about kids not looking at others, right? Okay, so that's a great question. Okay, so in terms of your own kids, we're going to answer that in a moment. But in terms of, like Rabbi Ribacoff said, in terms of other people influencing your kids, remember, you're the main influence. Okay, next question. I have to ask this to Rabbi Klatzko. Any advice on staying close as a couple while raising a baby? Now, the Klatzkos have been raising babies probably for the last, how many years?
As long as we can remember.
As long as they can remember. Every time, there's some Russian songs about this. Okay, here you go.
I don't really remember the time before. I was always raising babies. Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem.
Now grandchildren also.
My grandchildren, yeah. You think you can wash your hands after the kids? Baruch Hashem, I have more grandchildren than children.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That was going to happen.
Baruch Hashem, I have 15 grandchildren.
And counting.
Yeah, 15. I'm expecting another one any moment.
With that, we had that without one gray hair.
You want to know the trick? Sushi. Not tempura, like the raw stuff. Sushi, lots of sushi. How do you stay close? So, one very practical, I'll speak a little bit euphemistically. Intimacy between a husband and wife is a very big part of marriage. Your intimate time, and what happens is when very often the wife raises the children, the husband goes to work, and the night comes and they're both exhausted, and it's really hard to feel romantic when you're tired. And then if one of you happens to be a night owl, which means you're not in a rush to get to bed. You like to stay up, checking on your nose. And he or she, they want to get to bed. And there's this miscommunication, what are we doing tonight? It's 10 o'clock, and she's exhausted, and he's nowhere near. He's still watching the game, whatever. So then she'll end up just going to sleep, or he'll feel forced. So Rabbi Rutenberg said before about making a schedule. So that's what I was thinking. You should be really open. Are we convening tonight at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock? And the couple should know how to set up their evenings so that they're on the same page, and their co-host, which means their energy is not depleted, so that this very big part of relationship is given its fair sort of romantic heart that it needs. So that would be one thing. The second thing is that we, as we're raising children, we're allowed to say no to our children. We're allowed to say, there's a hierarchy of who gets your attention in life, in marriage. So hierarchy. So there's a totem pole. So number 1 comes your spouse. Number 2 comes your children. Number 3 comes your parents. And number 4 comes your siblings. And grandchildren you'll fit somewhere in between. Okay? But your spouse comes before your children. Because if your children are going to have a healthy home, then they'll feel healthy when mommy and daddy or mommy and tati are connected and they love each other. That's the best thing you can give your children, is parents who love each other and are there for each other. So even if the kids need you, you know, for whatever, you don't have to go running. You're not their servant. You don't have to be at their beck and call. Oh, mommy, no, I'm not available. I'm just not available now. And then get a good lock on your door that the kids don't, and lock your door and have time with your spouse. Now, if your baby's very, very little, then it's a little bit more difficult. But because little babies need their attention, they need changing. But as your children begin to grow, understand that it's the spouse that needs their attention, and then the children will be healthy. You'll be able to raise them.
I was going to answer this also a little bit quickly. So first of all, with Rabbi Klatzko's hierarchy, I'm just going to add, I think the self has to be there too. I would argue that the self is at the same level as the spouse. In other words, if you put yourself first, I don't think that's the right message, but it needs to be side by side. All the other ones, I think, are in the direct order the way you said it, but I think the spouse and yourself are side by side. In other words, they're both extremely important at the highest level, and if you neglect yourself, you will ultimately neglect your spouse and everything down the line. If you neglect your spouse, you have bigger problems. So I just want to touch on it's a bit of a sensitive topic, but I think it's important to talk about regarding the physical intimacy and the connection that a couple has with each other. And very often after a baby, especially after a second baby, and sometimes after the third baby, especially if the third baby is pretty much close, and you know, we found, when I say we, I mean myself, Mrs. Muscat, others at Emet, you know, that often it's the third baby that creates. I just heard a sigh. The third baby, that beautiful third baby, that often really challenges the couple's Shalom Bayit and headspace and just sanity. And
you're outnumbered.
Right. No, 100%. So I just want to touch on this because I think that this is something that often gets neglected. I'm going to try to do this in a very tznius, modest way. Physical intimacy between a husband and wife, from a Torah perspective, is not a luxury. It's not a nice thing if all the stars are aligned and if you know, everyone's happy with each other and there's, you know, and everyone's, you know, let's say the case where kids are older, that everything is aligned. And very, very often, I see this situation come up with couples, where there's a confusion about physical intimacy, and there's an understanding that physical intimacy is this, like, you know, is this thing that, you know, maybe it's just for the sake of having kids, which we know from the Torah perspective that's not true, or it's just like an icing to the cake, so to speak. The responsibilities are that the toilets are working properly, the responsibilities that the mortgage is paid, the responsibilities that the kids do their homework in time, and a lot of times I find this with parents who are trying to be super good parents, and they want their kids to be A+ in school, and they're so motivated, almost perfectionist types, and everything should be good, and everything should be right, and sometimes this is even a problem for couples who are very disciplined. It's good to be disciplined, right? Discipline equals freedom, right? Discipline, but sometimes that discipline, it ends up just knocking out this area. And one of the most important ideas the Torah teaches us is that mitzvah's ona is the concept that a husband has a responsibility to create an environment that his wife would like to have intimacy with him, and that there's a mitzvah to have intimacy together. And this is not a luxury. This is a necessity for a healthy couple. And I'm not talking about an extreme situation where they hate each other and they're thinking of, God forbid, divorce. Then it could be the intimacy is not right. But short of that, intimacy is an essential part, and this is why we have Taharat Mishpacha, because Taharat Mishpacha brings back that closeness. And a couple sometimes has their ups and downs, and there's closeness, times of less closeness. Every couple has that, every person has that. But then after the mikvah, there's supposed to be a reconnection. And that intimacy, very often, if it's in a proper construct, makes the emotional stuff much better. Makes a lot of the things that they were worried about a week ago, the arguments they had a week ago, seem very silly. Not because it's physically, it's actually not important. The issue is still there to a certain extent, but the spark, so to speak, the love and connection is reinforced. So we have to, it's very important to, and especially after a baby, but it's very important to remember that physical intimacy, like one of the things I talk about in my classes, I do a triangle. I say physical, emotional, spiritual. And the idea that they're touching each other all the time, the physical, emotional, spiritual, and attraction is physically, emotional, and spiritual, all connected. And when we think of physical is not just physical. And the same thing is true with food, the same thing is true with anything, but especially in the intimacy area. It's not just about dinner, right? It's a dinner that's properly, presented or with thought went into, that makes a person feel closer. So just something very, very important to keep in mind. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Rabbi Rutenberg and Rabbi Klatzko. Next question. This is also popping up a lot. Cleveland. Okay.
For the 5 towns? We'll represent New York. Okay.
My spouse and I have been married for a few years. When we met, they were not so religious, and that was fine with me. Now that we have children and I've grown, I want them to grow as well. How do I do that? You hear the question? The spouses met, they weren't really so religious. Then all of a sudden they're married a few years. Either the husband or the wife, all of a sudden now they're the Baba Sally. And like Mizrahi always says. And now they're like, come on, I married this person, shake it, right? Like, how do I get them to grow? Now we have kids, you have to dress a certain way, you have to daven, vice versa. What happens if one of the spouses becomes more religious, sort of changes flips the table from when they first got married, and now they're complaining that they want to move their husband along or their wife along? What do you say, Rabbi?
Delman.
I'm sure I heard like 3 questions in there.
The question is, I'll do it the shortest version.
Yeah.
The couple met, neither of them were super religious.
And now one of them is.
Now one of them has become more, and now especially they have kids in the picture, and they're like, come on. How do you get the other spouse to move? That's the question.
Okay. Yeah, okay. It's a tough one. I think that the Torah, Judaism, should be something that brings a couple together, not, God forbid, apart. And I always learned that you always get more bees with honey than you do with vinegar, right? So I think, I've been working in Jewish outreach long enough to know how this game works, meaning that we take a kid on a trip to Israel, or he comes back from yeshiva, and then he suffers from a disease we call Baal Tshuva syndrome. It's a real disease. That means that you've been Orthodox for 10 minutes, and now you have the right to tell everybody else how they're going to hell because they don't believe like you. It's a real problem. It's a real problem. And I remember a particular situation where a situation similar like this, where we had a young guy at Emet, and he came home really inspired, and he said, I want my parents to be inspired like I was too. So I said, I don't want you to suffer from this disease called Baal Tshuva syndrome, and I want you to tell your mother and father all the things they're doing right. So instead of yelling at them about how they're watching TV on Friday nights, or how they're doing this, so I said to the guy, I said, you know what you should do? I said, on Friday afternoon, come home 3 hours early from work. Right, and then when your mom says, what are you doing home so early? You say, the rabbi says I'm supposed to help help my mother prepare for Friday night and Shabbat. And then the mother said, ooh, I like this rabbi, very good. I like this religion. And he went about this for about 6-7 months. And then about 7 months later, I got an email from this guy's mother They said, Rabbi, the mother was a nurse at Long Island, Jewish, LIJ, and she said, Rabbi, I decided I want to keep Shabbos now, and please give me a note to get off of work on Friday and Saturday. So as far as a husband and wife, I think instead of telling your spouse all the things he or she is doing wrong, start telling them all the things they're doing right. Start telling things, I really, really appreciate it when you do something special, right? When you have a special dress that you wear only for Shabbos, or a special suit, or that special, the plov just tastes better on Shabbos, whatever, it's just better. And when you continue to extol the positive, then it becomes a pleasure and a joy. Judaism is a way to live by. It's not just like a class. It's not like 9 to 5, go to class, come home, and then take it off and be done. So if we find the love and the best within each other, it becomes a beautiful way to live. And I think that's the best way to do it.
So beautiful.
Beautiful.
Rabbi Delman, that was so well answered. I mean, I know many couples in this situation. One couple I'm thinking of in particular, way later on in life, the husband became religious, and it's very hard to move the wife along as well. So first thing, the husband wanted to get married formally under the chuppah. So it was around their 25th anniversary. So he said, "Oh, I was thinking, why can I just want to get you a new upgraded ring. Can I get you a brand new engagement ring for our 25th anniversary?" Wife's like, "Oh, of course." Then he said, "Oh, by the way, what do you think? Also, maybe since we're getting new things, let's renew our vows under the chuppah. What do you think?" With the rabbi, "Oh, great idea." Then came time to make the kitchen kosher. Husband's like, "Oh, this kitchen's sold. You mind getting a brand new kitchen? What do you think? Let's get a new kitchen." So, not a bad idea. So, is it okay if it's kosher? Okay, it'll be kosher. That's how you have to do it, like Rabbi Delman says, with awesome love. Great idea. Okay, what was your line? Honey is better than vinegar?
Yeah, you always get more bees with honey than with vinegar.
Oh, you always get more bees with honey than with vinegar. All right. For all of those of us that want to catch bees. Okay, now the next question, there's seldom, me doing any Shalom Bayis with Bukhari men where this question doesn't come up. I'm going to leave it to Rabbi Ribacoff. Okay, the question is that why do we have to learn about all these things? My grandfather and grandmother never learned about this, and they seem to have a great relationship. What do you say, Rabbi Ribacoff?
Learn about what?
I do not want to answer.
Like all this Shalom Bayis, talking 5 love languages, all this stuff. Come on.
So we can have these events and spend some Shabbatons there. Okay, great question. Maybe years ago things were a little more simpler, a little more easier. I think the roles were very defined in those days. A husband knew his role and his responsibility, whereas a wife knew her role and her responsibility, and they complemented each other in terms of he went out to work, she was home with the house, and everyone did their thing, and everything was fine. Today, unfortunately, things are not as fine. We believe that everything is min hashamayim, everything is from Hashem, everything is basher, as they say. God is mezavek zivugim, God is one who pairs the people. So years ago, God was batting 1,000. God knew what He was doing, and people stayed married for a very long time. And today, God is losing His touch. He's batting maybe 500. But is God the problem? No, Hashem is not the problem. We are the problem. There's too much going on in our lives to distract us from what's important and what's needed to be done when it comes to the relationship, when it comes to raising up the children. The issue with the phones, today both parents are working. The enticements that are out there today for the kids is not what it was years ago. It's a different world, and if a person is not ready to step up to the challenge, you'll have a big problem. So we need to be ahead of the game, we need to be prepared. Preventative medicine, I think, is the best thing to do, and the more you learn before you get married, and even while you are married, to go to classes, go to shiurim, have your mentors, have your rabbis, rabbis, people who to talk to when it comes to relationships, marriage, when it comes to parenting. It's the way to go. And if you're not up with the times, you can't live your lifestyle from 50 years ago, 100 years ago back in Russia or wherever it is. Today in America, it's not communism anymore. We're in a democracy. Women have rights. You can call the police. You can go to jail. There are major issues today, and women feel that I can work. I have I have a salary, I can support myself, I don't need to stay home. I don't need to live with this type of abuse and type of issues, God forbid, unfortunately. But so we need to understand that it's not the same times that it was. We need to be ahead of the game. We need to learn different methods, different modes. It's not as simple as it was in the olden days. Even when it comes to religion, it was just they believed in God and everything was done. It was simple. Today we question everything that's out there. Why? I don't understand. I don't get it. It's too much. Again, it was a much simpler, easier type of a time. Even though we're not, I mean, we're very well off. We're well to do. We have a lot of luxuries today. We have a lot of money. But at the same time, it comes with problems, it comes with issues, and we need to be aware of it and work together with our spouse to get to the right result of building a beautiful house together with each other.
Beautiful. All right. Yeah, I'm just like, I remember like in the 70s when I was in the former Soviet Union, we had like my parents, my grandparents and me, we lived in like 2 rooms and a kitchen. You know, we were considered a wealthy side. So, you know, so it's like, alone time, that was not a question. Oh, how do we get more alone time? There is no alone time. You're never alone. So it's a different Metzius, it's a different reality. And yeah, all I can say for Chizuk is Lefum Tsar Agra. With the effort comes the reward. Okay, next, we're going to go back to Rabbi Klatzko. What if your child is a teenager and asking not to be imposed doing any mitzvot on them? Saying, this is who I am, leave me alone. Teenagers.
Unfortunately, this question is really common. It happens a lot. And children, more than even when I was young, it's a common theme that kids go off the derech. It's a common theme that children in their teens have classmates that are rebelling, and they watch their classmates, and it becomes a question. What used to not be a question is today a legitimate question in their minds. So I want to give you a very, very important piece of parenting advice. Our children have to know that our love for them is not contingent on their religiosity. They have to understand that we love them, we love them regardless. When we tell them, oh, you know, we'd like you to go to Minyan, they know that. They've all their life, they've seen you go, you brought them to Minyan when they were young. There are some children that need to go on journeys, and we don't like that. I mean, it's hard for us. But we have to love our children and let them go on that journey and show them that we love them even though they're on that journey. And what will happen is, if they feel safe and they feel cared for and they don't feel that your love is conditional, then Be'ezrat Hashem, all of the good ingredients you put into that dish will one day make that dish taste delicious. And while it's true that more children are going off the derech at a younger age today than they have in the past, it is true. You have little children already, 12, 13, 14, already using phones on Shabbos, questioning. It's also true that we have more children coming back on the derech at the age of 18, 19, 20 than ever. Because what's sending the children away are not deep philosophical questions. They're not wondering about evolution. You know what sends children away? You know why they're wandering? Because of something called ta'ava. Ta'ava. They just want pleasure. They see with a click of a mouse, I could buy what I want, I could see what I want, I can hear what I want, I can carry it in my pocket. The ta'ava, I thank God I did not grow up as a kid in this generation. It's very hard. Our kids have a nisayon that no one's ever had before. They've never had it. And unfortunately, that nisayon hits kids at a younger age than note of communism or feminism or Darwinism or all the old things that made people masculine, that made them go off the derech. Today, it's just hava. And when kids get to be a little bit older, they learn, you know what, I have a desire, but I'll never be happy unless I control that desire. And there are children who say, you know what, I can find happiness within Judaism. And maybe it'll take a trip to Israel after high school. That could be. Maybe it could be a Rebbe. Maybe they just need maturity. But if you burn your bridges before that time, if you really make it harsh at home, so then even if the child one day would want to go back to spite you, they're not going to. Because your love was contingent on their religiosity. So let's be mitpalel that our children do stay on the derech.
Amen.
Let's also recognize that if they do go on a journey, they should know that we love them tremendously. And there are many stories, it's late, I'm not going to tell you them, but I can just tell you with first-hand experience, love works and love does bring them back.
Very good.
Okay, next question for Rabbi Rutenberg, since you have the mic right here. This is the last question, and then we're going to do...
Can I just ask a quick follow-up question to what you mentioned? You mentioned that...
Wait, is this written down? Okay, fine.
No,
very quick. You mentioned that kids go up to derech earlier because of possibly classmates. Do you find it that one or two people in the class could take down the whole class?
Absolutely.
Is that...
Absolutely. I'm going to say one thing. The school won't always listen, but in a certain way you have to be like a Papa Bear. And if there is a kid or two or three that are bringing down the class, make an appointment with the principal and see if they can do something about it. Sometimes they won't be able to. Sometimes they're not aware of it. Sometimes, and this is usually the case, they're aware but they're not aware how bad it is. That's usually the case. Like, principals would know that there is a kid who's a problem, but they don't really understand how deep the problem is or what the kids are doing during the break or what the kids are speaking about. And if you are able to do something, you do it. And sometimes, unfortunately, it's your kid. God forbid.
God forbid.
Yeah.
Okay. I get my wife nice gifts, but she never likes them. Like a vacuum cleaner. No, I don't know.
Dishwasher.
A bowling ball. I don't know how to make her happy. Please help. Rabbi Rutenberg, this is perfect for you. Help this nice husband.
So the first thing that comes to mind is the 5 love languages, right?
Yes.
So it would seem that this gentleman might have an upbringing where gifts are very important. Typically, if you know the concept of the 5 love languages, just really quickly, there's the idea that that each person has different ways that they feel loved, and the author came up with 5. It doesn't have to be these exact 5, but I'll just tell you quickly. Words of affirmation, which is like not just appreciation, like a really high level of appreciation, quality time, physical touch, gifts, and acts of service. And who's the author again, Rabbi Ribacoff?
Dr. Chapman.
Gary Chapman, right? So Gary Chapman came up with this. And the key concept of the 5 love languages is that every person has a primary and a secondary. Everyone likes all 5, hopefully, right? But everyone has a primary and a secondary love language where when your spouse gives you that, you feel the most loved. And if you keep giving your spouse, let's say you're a person that needs quality time, and your spouse needs words of affirmation, and you keep giving your spouse you keep giving your spouse quality time but not telling them what they need to hear, they're never going to feel really fully fulfilled, and it's going to create a lot of frustration. So gifts is one of those things which is so different between families. Some families are gift families, and some families are not gift families. Some families show their love through gifts, and some almost go the other way on it, and there's no right way when it comes to gifts. Gifts can be a great thing. And we also have a concept in the Torah, that we shouldn't focus on gifts. So I remember one couple that I was helping, that it was so extreme that literally there was a fight broke out in the hospital after the woman had a baby because of a gift and the lack of a gift and the whole situation about gifts. So my first response to this question is that if I remember correctly, Rabbi, the question was that he keeps giving gifts and she doesn't
Yeah, and he says he doesn't know. It sounds like gifts is his first love language.
Right, so that's what it seemed to me. It seemed to me like that she is looking for a different type of love that's not going to be. Now she may also want the gifts. Okay, I remember one couple that was married just a few weeks, but the guy was in jewelry, and every time he got into a fight with his wife, he would buy her something, he'd give her something, and they had a lot of fights just within a few months. And I remember them sitting in front of me, and I turned to the couple, and I'm like, it's not going to work. I said, not every time you have an argument, you buy her something. And she looks at me with this eyes like, be quiet. I like those gifts, you know. So we might like getting the gifts, but the reality is that she is basically saying to him, I want something else. I want love that's not just about gifts. So that'll be the first thing. Now, not knowing the person who asked the question, it also is possible that the wife in this particular case might have a materialistic side, and she wants gifts, but she constantly wants more and more, and she's never happy with what she's getting from him. And if that's the case, that's a much bigger issue, which unfortunately is also very prevalent in our society, where people, she may have grown up in a house where that's the way that, let's say, her father was not so present, but he kept buying, Louis Vuitton bags for her mother. And then the fact that she's not getting these gifts means to her that, like, oh, you don't love me, because that's what people do. And so she may be, it may be the exact opposite. So it could be that she's asking for a different type of love, a love which is not about gifts, or it could be on the contrary. She grew up where gifts is so important, and he's just not making the cut because she wants more and more and more and more. And if that's the case, it doesn't mean that it's not fixable, okay? But I would strongly suggest that the couple goes through a certain type of counseling and guidance to understand, that maybe what she was used to from home was not so healthy, and the fact that her husband's not doing it is not because he doesn't care, but because it might not be the healthiest thing.
Okay, so we are being asked to depart from the building. So we have one last question that we're going to ask all the panel members. So for Shalom Bayit's purposes, we were told to end by 10:30. Okay, so first of all, let's give a huge round of applause for all the panelists. And you guys were so amazing, so good, and this is going to be recorded on Torah Anytime for time memoriam. And so anyone who forgets all the information that was here, please click on, and you'll be right back. And you guys, thank you for being in the audience on a 20 degrees night coming out here. They close schools in Russia in this type of weather. And we have a full house. Shai, every seat is taken, Baruch Hashem. We still have to eat some of the sushi, and their answers and all our answers are coming from your questions. So let's give the audience a huge round of applause. And this is such a good last question. I wish we always ended with this one. But everyone, you only have choose one. What is a good marriage book you recommend for couples to read together? Okay, you get one book. All right, we're going to pass down the mic. Besides the Torah, of course.
Actually, I would tell you to read a book about Lashon Hara each night with your wife. Or with your husband. My wife and I, we would do there's a book where it's a daily, I just forgot.
A lesson a day?
It's not a lesson a day.
Positive words, positive.
Yeah, well,
Family Lashon Hara lesson a day.
I forgot. It was one of the books from the Chavetz Chaim Heritage Foundation. We just finished that. We did 2 books a day, 2 pages a day. 2 pages a day.
You and your wife.
My wife and I, yeah.
Wow, that is so cute.
Yay! And what it does is it's not homespun wisdom. I'm always skeptical of homespun wisdom. The Torah's got a lot of wisdom. And the way that we speak about people in a positive in a positive manner, allows us to speak about each other in a positive manner. And a lot of the questions that were asked tonight can be solved if we're more careful in Shemir Lashon. We're not going to go and speak to our parents about our spouse if we're careful about Lashon Hara. We're going to be really respectful. So I would say find a good Shemir Lashon book for 5 minutes a day at night before you go to sleep. Take it out, crack that open, turn on the little night light, and you read it together, and you feel holy, and you feel accomplished.
Beautiful. Okay, Rutenberg.
So I'm going to break the rule, and I'm going to recommend 2. So
one. Okay.
So any book by John Gottman, okay, is awesome. I just did a workshop recently on his stuff. I just gave a workshop on his John Gottman, whichever one is the most popular in Amazon at that moment. I can't think of the title right now. 7 most important things. You know, John Gottman has amazing stuff on marriage. He has the most empirical data on marriage, and just to share a very brief point he makes, that he says that when he started his research, he assumed that the amount of positive versus negative comments, connections between couples would be in a couple that would be a healthy couple would be like, let's say, 2 positive to 1 negative or something like that. And what he came to find was that in actuality, a healthy couple has between 5 and 6 positive connections for every 1 negative. And couples that end up getting divorced have 0.8 to 1. It's not so much less than the positive. And a positive comment is just, could say something nice, or even just recognizing them, stopping for a moment to recognize their presence. You're doing something else, and they walk in the room, and you look up, and you see them. That's positive. The other book I would recommend is a book by Sue Johnson called "Hold Me Tight." Okay, and this is also cutting edge of marriage to work on your relationship, and it's called Emotional Focused Marriage Therapy, EFT, right? Emotional Focused Therapy. Brilliant stuff, and I think both can really help you. I give a bracha to all of you that your relationship should just get stronger and stronger. Amen, with yourself, with your children, and with Hashem, and of course with your spouse.
Amen.
In my younger years, I'm still pretty young, but in my younger years, so I did Sefer Chavetz Chaim, a lesson a day. My Rosh Hashiva, Rav Shimon Zatzal, his Rebbe was the Chavetz Chaim. So really learning from Rebbe to Talmud was something my wife and I cherished. Although to be honest, I think that the reading of the books is important. I don't think it's a be-all and end-all. I think the most important thing is to really listen to each other, to really listen. And as an example of that, just taken from the last question that we just spoke about the gifts, I have this problem, to be very frank. I have this problem with the gift giving, where thankfully my wife is very low maintenance. It's amazing, and it's a real bracha, but it's very tough around gift giving season, because I say, so what can I get you for Hanukkah? I don't need anything, it's fine. I really want to get you something. It's fine, I don't need it, really I don't need it, but I gotta get you something, because my love language is I want to give her something special. I want to give her something sweet. It's that diamond ring, it's that new necklace, whatever it was. And it's just, and we feel we want to give the other person what we want. And you know what my wife says back to me every time? I'm sure every lady in this room is going to say the same thing. You know what she says? And I could put the mic to you and you're going to say it. You know what I really want? I need you to change the baby's diaper every night this week for a week. And we, right? And we say, but that's not the gift that we envisioned. We wanted to give you something bold, something beautiful, something sparkly. We have to listen to what each other wants. And same thing true for husbands. That's what it is. I think that books are important to learn and grow, read, become more educated. But I think if we could round out everything, if I could just round it out to one word to help our Shalom bias, just listen. Listen better.
Okay.
So with the book you second Rabbi Klatzko.
Sefer Chavetz Chaim, lesson a day.
Yeah. Cash in an envelope also works, my wife tells me.
And a lot.
A lot. Envelope, no gift.
Depends on the type of discretion.
I guess it's hard to pick out one specific book. Just offhand, I would probably go with Rabbi Arush's book, one for the men, one for the women. But that's for each one individually to read. I think they're great, very encompassing about a lot of important things that each one should know. But that's for each one individually. A book for the couple to share or to read together, to learn together. I don't want to recommend a specific book. I would say go on a trip to the bookstore and try to pick out a book that you both want to read together. I think just spending the time together with each other is much more important. And go on a trip, take some coffee afterwards, have a good time, and whenever you have a chance to sit down and read, you want to listen to a lecture together, again, for any time or whatever you want, there's plenty out there. But the main thing is that you spend time with each other. The book reading and even the lectures is a nice thing to do, but it's more of the bonding time with each other. I think that's the more do its effect for the couple as well.
Okay.
What a panel. Rabbi Klatzko is the only one that answered the question properly. But that being said, right, and you're right also. Thank you, Rabbi Klatzko. That being said, beautiful to hear all your responses, and really, this has been amazing. I just want to end, since I'm going to answer the question also with the book that I currently am recommending to people to read together is called Beyond Mars and Venus, written by the very Mars and Venus person who did Teshuvah. He said, I was wrong. For this generation, Mars and Venus doesn't work anymore. Because why? Like you alluded to, before people want to be role mates. You do A, spouse does B, everything's hunky-dory. Mars and Venus. Now, forget about that. People don't want to be role mates anymore, he says. I'm adding this part. I think because we're getting closer to Mashiach, we want to be soulmates. Soulmates. And soulmates takes a lot more work than role mates. And he explains in that book very beautifully with a lot of Torah concepts, including some secular version of the Deed of Laws, which is amazing, how to be soulmates. So Beyond Mars and Venus is a great book. I want to just thank the panelists. I want to give you a big bracha from all of us. Okay, Hashem should continue to give you all amazing Shalom Bayit, nachas from your kindula, and you should be able to help Klal Yisrael. Amen. And I want to give the rest of us a bracha as well. That we should also have amazing Shalom Bayit and continue to learn and grow together.
Amen.
Okay, Laila Tov.